Well, the Pentagon presents an alternative to Israel's plan to assault in Rafah. They support the Israeli government attacking people in Rafah. They just don't like it that it's obvious genocide, so they want to uh, advise the Israeli government in making it seem less like genocide so that the Israeli government can look less like a genociding nation. It's just hilarious.
Today at the Pentagon, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin presented an alternative vision to Israel's stated assault plan on the southern Gazan city of Rafah. More than 1 million Gazans have fled their homes and are now sheltering there. Austin and Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant met today as negotiations over a ceasefire and hostage release seem to hit an impasse. Nick Schifrin is following it all, and he joins me now. Nick, so how
Why isn't the Israeli government required to also release people that they have kidnapped? Because let's not pretend here, minors that are being held in Israeli prisons aren't hostages because it is outrageous to claim that these children are Hamas soldiers and looking to destroy the Israeli government. I mean, talking about 12-year-olds here just throwing stones.
did this meeting today between Austin and Gallant go?
As you said, William, Austin laid out an alternative vision that the U.S. sees that Israel should use in order to go into Rafah to Gallant, who was here on a pre-scheduled visit separate from that delegation we spoke about last night that Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, had canceled. The U.S. agrees with Israel that Israel needs to go after Hamas's final 4 battalions that are hiding among the population in Rafah. It just disagrees with how to go about doing that. And according to a senior defense official, Austin laid out a U.S. vision that includes precision targeting of senior Hamas leaders.
I find it funny that they put precision targeting in parentheses when when that is usually nowadays means like sarcasm. Like, yeah, we're going to precision target senior Hamas leaders. So they're saying that the Israeli government is going to end up killing a bunch of innocent people, but they're going to pretend that they're uh, targeting uh, Hamas leaders using precision targeting, or I guess, probably claiming that they're going to use like smart missiles and stuff to kill these people. And if, civilians die, well, the Israeli government's not at fault for it.
Securing the border with Egypt and ensuring that humanitarian assistance goes into Rafah and civilians leave Rafah in the
Okay, securing the border with Egypt, what, preventing people from being able to leave into Egypt, ensuring that humanitarian assistance goes into, the Israeli government is not going to allow that. You even have Israeli citizens that are preventing aid into Gaza. Civilians leave Rafah? Why do they have to leave? Uh, the force relocation of civilians from their lands is considered a genocide. So this is just the United States supporting genocide. And where are people supposed to go when every part of Gaza has been demolished due to the Israeli government? Like, come on. Uh, Honestly, let's be real here. People in Rafah have nowhere to go.
right sequence. The senior defense official who spoke to us earlier pointed out that Rafah is not only home to 1.5 million displaced Gazans, many of whom have been displaced twice, it's also strategically important for aid. Rafah City is right next to Rafah, the border crossing, and the Kerem Shalom crossing through which aid needs to arrive into Gaza. And U.S. officials are imploring Israel to allow more aid into Gaza, as Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said today.
I mean, if the Israeli government was truly allowing a lot of aid into Gaza, you wouldn't have to have nations the Israeli government to allow more aid into Gaza. Uh, if the Israeli government were truly the good guys, nobody would be begging the Israeli government to allow more aid into Gaza. They would be doing it themselves, uh, giving as much aid as possible to the innocent Palestinians that deserve aid. But mm, the ultra right-wing, ultra nationalist Israeli government does not care if Palestinian babies die because the ministers consider them to be evil and terrorists and deserving of death because the ultra right-wing nationalist Israeli government only cares about genocide of the Palestinian people.
Protecting Palestinian civilians from harm is both a moral necessity and a strategic imperative. In Gaza today, the number of civilian casualties is far too high, and the amount of humanitarian aid is far too low. Gaza is suffering a humanitarian catastrophe, and the situation.
It's crazy how people will send troops and weapons and money to Ukraine to help defend themselves, but not a single nation has sent troops or weapons to Gaza or the West Bank for the Palestinians to be able to defend themselves, even though they admit that there is a genocide going on. Why is it that these nations will send weapons to white people, but not brown people?
Is getting even worse.
So those are some of Austin's strongest words about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Israeli officials continue to blame the UN for a lack of distribution capacity. And William, Israeli officials are telling the U.S. tonight that they will have a humanitarian plan before they assault Rafah.
Right. We will figure out a way to not kill as many people and give them, food. They're not murdered by Israeli bombs. This is wild. It would be like Nazis saying, hey, we will help Jewish people if they don't die after we, commit a genocide against them.
Nick, part of these negotiations over the ceasefire and over the release of hostages is also this conversation about how to move those Gazans trapped in Rafah to the north in advance of this assault. What is the state of those negotiations?
The talks appear to be at an impasse after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu withdrew his negotiators from Doha, where these negotiations take place. And there appears to be two major disagreements, William. One is exactly what we were just talking about, the movement of Gazans from the south to the north. Israeli officials want to continue to go after Hamas.
Okay, where are they supposed to go in the north when everything in the north has been destroyed? I mean, the Israeli government started with northern Gaza, everything, told Palestinians to go to a safe zone, and then they would bomb that safe zone, and they would continue uh, having them move further and further south, and now Rafah is the last place they can hold up in, and now they're supposed to go somewhere that has been destroyed. That is just utter insanity and stupidity. There's no place for them to go, and the this idea of like having them move is just going to be an excuse by the Israeli government to bomb Rafah. And if anybody dies, they're going to be like, oh, well, they didn't leave Rafah, so they deserve to be murdered. They're acting as human shields.
In the north, and they don't want to have to deal with thousands of civilians. Number two is whether Israeli forces have to withdraw either from the cities or from Gaza itself after this ceasefire. But the framework of the ceasefire remains. About 40 hostages would be released in exchange for about 700 Palestinian detainees that Israel has agreed to. So the framework still remains.
They're not detainees, they're hostages. The Israeli government kidnaps kids and uh, makes them go through like military courts If a kid throws a rock, or if a kid lights off a firework, or if a kid just says no to an Israeli IDF, they're sent to jail and they're treated like they're terrorists because the Israeli government is a fascist government who claims that anybody against them is an enemy, and it's justified to torture and imprison them. Uh, but everybody wants to act like they're just, detainees. I mean, if Hamas were to kidnap people and put them through military courts, would it be justified to say that they're just detainees? No.
But Netanyahu is calling